Hello, George. Welcome to Investments for Impact. It's a really great pleasure to have you here with us today. And for the sake of our audience, if you could just start by introducing yourself. Actually, I myself, in spite of having worked with you a bit in projects, I don't even know what your background is. So maybe you can go into a bit of that.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Moses and Wamboi, for having me today on this podcast. Yeah, it's interesting that we've known each other for some time, but we are yet to get to know each other that much. But let me do the honors. As you said, my name's George Murumba. I work as a principal program officer for the African Union Development Agency, AUDA-NEPAD. My journey in the African development spans about 20 years or thereabouts. I've worked for major international development partners across the continent. I started in my formative years working in Somalia. Then I moved down to South Africa where I continued my studies and then went on to work for the New Zealand government, the Canadian government, and went on to become a consultant working with many international development partners. From a sector perspective, I've had a bit of experience in health, in education, and presently I'm within the industrialization division of the AUDA-NEPAD, where, amongst other things, I primarily coordinate an accelerator called the Homegrown Solution Accelerator Program, which really sits squarely within the subject that we will be speaking to today. So, in summary, that is my background. I love working in the development space, and certainly my passion is to see this continent taking its rightful place from a development and success story. Thank you.
Thank you, George. So, moving on, maybe you could also tell us about AUDA NEPAD. What is this organization about? What are its primary goals and functions?
Thank you, Moses. The African Union Development Agency, AUDA-NEPAD, as we like really kind of calling it in short form, is the technical body of the African Union charging with driving Africa's growth and transformation. Our primary goal is to accelerate the implementation of key continental frameworks, particularly Agenda 2063, which is, as you know, Africa's blueprint for inclusive growth and sustainable development. We operate at an interesting space, which is the intersection of policy formulation, project implementation, and partnership building. From a mandate point of view, we cover a wide range of sectors from agriculture, food security, infrastructure, education, skills development, health system strengthening. Essentially, what you would call us is the engine room of Africa's development agenda, working tirelessly to translate our continental vision into really meaningful development on the ground.
Because AUDA NEPAD is not the kind of organization that people see every day, could you talk about some of the work that you do that people might have seen but may not quite have known is your work? Stuff that ordinary people could relate to.
Indeed, that's a very interesting and I think an important question, Moses. And let me share a few of the initiatives that our listeners might relate to. I think closer to the subject we are speaking about today is really the African Continental Free Trade Area. And our work with this, together, of course, with other players in the ecosystem, it's not just about economic policy. It's about making it easier for, take for example, an entrepreneur who's in Nigeria being able to sell their products in Kenya, or for a professional in South Africa to offer their services in Morocco, which, as you know, currently is really not very possible. And this is about creating jobs and opportunities. So just I think this is relatable to most people, and we look forward to having the Africa Continental to See Free Trade Area, as the CFTA, as it's otherwise known, becoming a reality for the continent. Another one that I think everyone relates to is the program for infrastructure development for Africa, and I think imagine yourself being able to get onto a car from Cape Town and driving all the way to Cairo on a well-maintained highway, or being in the most remote part and yet having access to high-speed internet. This is really about PIDA, the Program for Infrastructure Development for Africa, is working towards. In agriculture, which of course, as you know, is the mainstay of the continent, we have our comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program, which seeks to help us to boost production and reduce our hunger, working with smallholder farmers for better seeds and improving farming techniques for them as well. I think those are typical examples of the work streams that AUD and NEPAD, and of course the African Union are working towards. And of course, we will be talking to other aspects of MedTech today. Thank you.
George, I love the picture that you're painting of connecting the African continent and creating, opportunities. Really, really love it. Just curious, what role AUDA NEPAD plays in the medtech sector specifically?
Yeah, Wamboi, very good question. And I think we start to dig a little bit deeper now in that space. In the medtech space, AUD and NEPAD plays a multifaceted role. We're just not observers or advisors. We are an active catalyst for change. First, we act as a bridge between innovators, policymakers, and investors. We identify promising medtech solutions across the continent and help connect them with the resources that they need to scale. Secondly, and I think very importantly here, we are deeply, deeply involved in policy harmonization. The African medical device market is highly fragmented, with each country having its own regulatory framework, as you know. So we're working to create a more unified approach, which will make it easier for innovators to reach patients across borders. Thirdly, and I think equally important, we are champions for local production. The continent imports upward of 70 to 90% of its medical devices. And we are looking to work to change this by supporting local manufacturing initiatives. And I think we'll be speaking a little bit about this later, and technology transfer programs. Lastly, but not least, we are really at the coal face and the forefront of capacity building. We organize a lot of training programs for regulators, healthcare workers, and innovators to ensure they're equipped to harness the full potential of medical technologies. A concrete example of this is really our work with the African Medical Devices Forum, which we coordinate, and we'll be speaking to this a little bit later, perhaps when we talk about other areas as well. This platform brings together regulators from across the continent to work towards a harmonized standard and regulations for medical devices. So, really, this is all the areas that we are working with, and we are really at the coalface of supporting the medtech sector in Africa.
Thank you, George. And we really look forward to welcoming you to the Transforming African MedTech conference in August, where we are going to be discussing these issues. And it will be great to get the perspective from the African Union, level about how to harmonize some of these initiatives and how to move the medtech sector forward.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you for the invitation.
George, you talked about being at the intersection of policy, implementation, and partnerships. And policy is really critical. And I really liked what you talked about as far as the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is concerned. Now, if you could now bring that down to to medtech, and just tell us a bit about how the current policy and environment looks like as far as medtech in particular is concerned in Africa.
Yeah, thanks, Moses. I think that's a fundamentally important question because, as you know, policy is really about shaping and orienting the space. And this is how I would describe the policy environment for the medtech sector in Africa. At best, I would describe it as a patchwork of progress and challenges. Because, as you know, on the one hand, we are seeing encouraging developments. Countries like South Africa, Kenya, Egypt have made significant strides in developing comprehensive regulatory framework for medical devices. The East African community as well, from a regional perspective, is really shaping and moving forward in harmonizing their medical device regulations. On the other hand, many countries lack specific regulations for medical devices, often regulating them under the broader pharmaceutical laws, which, as you know, isn't always appropriate given the unique nature of medical technologies. The other challenge also in this space is that there is a wide disparity in regulatory capacity across the continent, with some countries having well-staffed regulatory bodies, while the others have limited resources. So that imbalance, of course, creates a lot of challenges when you're trying to ensure, a harmonized process. Another aspect of the policy environment is, as you know, the growing recognition of digital health solutions. Countries like Rwanda and Ghana have been pioneering integrating digital health solutions into their health strategies. However, as you know, there are issues around data protection, interoperability standards, and the reimbursement of digital health services, which have moved faster than this policy space itself. So I think those present the kind of contextual space that we find ourselves. That said, as you know, during COVID-19, there were many changes that took place, and we can say COVID was really a catalyst for policy changes in this space. Many countries fast-track approval processes for essential medical devices and digital health solutions. The challenge now is how to build on this momentum to create a long-term, sustainable policy framework that will take us to really the frontier of this space.
Thanks, George. I like the way you have just painted that picture of how the landscape looks like. And so, given that those are the challenges that we are experiencing, what would you say are the main ones? You talked about a patchwork of good and bad, but if we were to look at the bad, what would you say are the key challenges that are at the top of your mind as AUDA-NEPAD?
Yeah, I think right at the top of these challenges, really facing the medtech space is, I would say, the lack of a harmonized policy or lack of harmonization across the countries. Take, for example, a medical device manufacturer looking to enter the African continent, and we've had practical cases of this. Must navigate dozens of different regulatory processes, which is time consuming and costly. This definitely discourages investments, but also delays the introduction of potentially life saving technologies. And we have many instances that we've seen in this regard. Secondly, as I think I slightly alluded to earlier, the issue of limited regulatory capacity. The policies might be there on paper, but the human resources and the technical expertise to implement them is lacking. And this often leads to delays in approvals, or, on the other hand, inadequate scrutiny of devices entering the market. And, we are plagued with situations where we have inappropriate medtech devices being available in our continent. The other challenge is really keeping pace with technology. As we all know, the medtech field is rapidly evolving with innovations that are AI-powered diagnostics, 3D medical devices, highly advanced wearables. Many existing regulatory frameworks weren't designed with these technologies in mind because technology is just sort of moving so fast ahead. The other is one that is, I think, very important, of balancing innovation with the safety of patients and the rights of patients. While we want to encourage innovation, which is something that, of course, we have to keep up with and speed up the new technologies, we can't compromise on safety. So that delicate balance is important. And I think for me personally, the last one that I'm going to allude to is the issue of local manufacturing. Many current policies don't provide enough incentives for local production of medical devices. So we are over relying on imports. And, we know what happened during COVID-19, where, the supply chain disruptions just completely decimated us, and we were not able to access very basic medical devices, if not services. So I think these are some of the challenges that we're addressing with all stakeholders, member states, governments, regulators, industry players, and the like. So in a nutshell, I think those are the pertinent points that I would put to the fore. Thank you.
So, George, given those challenges, what initiatives are there in place on the continent to streamline regulatory and other processes? And how, I'll ask, a two-part question. How does AUDA-NEPAD work with African governments to create a favorable environment?
Yeah, so primarily, as you know, we are part of the African Union, and our key constituents are really our member states, or governments, as you would call them. So that's fundamentally important. So we work to assist our member states in solving some of these problems. So, of course, we do this. We do this by ensuring a multi-pronged approach is in place to one, shape the policy environment. So our team of experts work with national health ministries, regulatory frameworks, to future-proof some of this with best practices from around the world that we bring. Secondly, we facilitate knowledge sharing. As you know, there is a high asymmetry in the continent around, as I mentioned earlier, some countries that are quite advanced and others that are not. So we work through the platforms like the African Medical Devices Forum to bring policymakers around the table to exchange their experiences. This helps countries to learn from each other's successes and avoid repeating these mistakes. We also focus on capacity building. We organize training programs for policymakers and regulators, convening topics like risk-based regulation, clinical evaluation. This helps build the human capital capacity needed to implement and enforce medtech policies. I think I've alluded to the fact that we work towards policy harmonization. So we are working to support the development of the African Medical Devices Regulatory Framework initiative, which aims to create a unified regulatory framework for the continent. We are also working to align national policies with continental frameworks like the African Union Pharmaceutical Manufacturing Plan for Africa, which also provides for medical devices. Lastly, we organize, high policy dialogues for industry stakeholders and development partners. And this is why, of course, we, as you alluded to, would love to be part of the discussions in the upcoming conference that you're convening on MedTech in this space. So I think that talks to how we work with our member states to remedy the issues that we raised earlier with respect to the challenges that we're experiencing. Thank you, Wambui.
And as you do this work, George, there's always the conversation about which part of this is the trees, so the details, and then what does the forest look like? And I just really wonder, what is the big vision for the medtech sector in the next 5 to 10 years? What would it look like? What is that vision that you have set?
Thank you, Wambui. First of all, as you know, the Agenda 2063 is quite ambitious in itself, right? And it is our development blueprint as a continent. We, as a people, are keen to ensure that the aspirations that are noted are realized. But we are coming from a low base. We realize that. So the challenges are immense. But we have a very ambitious and transformative vision. We envision that Africa is not just a consumer of medical technologies, but a significant contributor to the global medtech innovation. So first and foremost, we aim to see a thriving ecosystem of local innovators and manufacturers. And we envision innovation hubs in major cities across the continent, churning out solutions that are really tailored to the African problems. And most importantly, set for low-cost settings that we have. So this would be low-cost diagnostic tools for neglected African diseases to AI-powered triage systems for low resource constrained settings. Another one I think that I told you is really keen for me is increasing local manufacturing. So our goal is to see that at least 50% of the medical devices used in Africa are produced locally. This would not only improve affordability, but as you know, would be an important part of ensuring jobs are available for our people and also drive economic growth. From a regulatory point of view, we want to see a harmonized system where a medical device approved in one country can easily enter markets across the continent. And this is a really important issue because we are dealing, as I said earlier, with multiple frameworks that impede accessibility to these medical devices and medtech in general. We also see digital health playing a larger role in general in the health systems, and we anticipate that there will be widespread adoption of electronic health records, telemedicine, AI-assisted diagnostics, even in rural areas. And this will be supported by digital infrastructure. And this is, as you know, I talked about PIDA earlier. So this is where the connections come in. So having that infrastructure is relevant as high-speed internet connection. Furthermore, we envision Africa becoming a hub for frugal innovation. We believe the constraints and the challenges that we face will enable us to develop cost-effective, robust, and friendly medical solutions and technologies that could find applications not only in this continent, but generally across where there are low resource settings. Lastly, but not least, we envision a situation where investments will flow in the continent. We are aiming to at least triple the current rate of investment in this space so that we can be able to achieve all those other issues that I spoke to. That said, it's important to note that this is going to be from a concerted effort, government, private sector, academia, and development partners and development agencies like ourselves. So NEPAD is committed to being part of this success, and I believe we are strongly on the path to that. Thank you.
George, that is a very strong vision. I feel like you're speaking my language. I feel like I want to jump on that, on that vision and become a part of it. And I'm sure that there are many people, given the convening that we had last year with people who are working in the medtech industry, and the passion and commitment that they brought to the conversations, I think we are in good company and that vision can become a reality.
Indeed.
I'm so glad that we are having this conversation because some of these things that you're doing are really critical, but a lot of people don't know that you're paddling, you're paddling very hard below the surface. So I'm so glad that this is coming to light. And I guess my next question is around, you talked about some things that really uh, are close to my heart. You talked about employment creation and local manufacturing, and as a continent, those are really important parts of our aspirations. Now, my question is, how are you attracting capital to achieve this vision? We do know, of course, that it will take a lot of financing to achieve this. So I'm keen to just hear you unpack that side of the story.
Moses, thank you. That's a very important question, and as you know, we are broadly perceived as a continent that is risky, right, for investments, and we have to keep telling the narrative that we're not. We are a continent that is safe for investments, and that has the talent, to be quite honest with you. Albeit, some of the issues that we've raised. As AUDA-NEPAD, we first I must say, it's not an effort that is undertaken without the collaboration of other players. So this is something that we do with other stakeholders in the ecosystem, and we employ multifaceted strategies to try and get investments in the African MedTech space. First, and this relates to the issue of regulation, we try and improve the overall business environment. So, as we've said, we work with governments to streamline the processes for starting and operating medtech businesses. You might be aware, which is another somewhat subset of this, the continued uptake of countries with the Startup Act, for example, where there is a whole model law around how to set up startups, making it easy, tax incentives and the like. So regulation, right, from a regulation point of view, policy harmonization point of view, making it clear how these investors, when they're coming in, they're clear about what they will face. And as I said, we are part of that is advocating for tax incentives and other financial mechanisms that will promote African medtech and make it more attractive. Secondly, we are working on de-risking the investments. One way of doing this is supporting the regulatory framework, as I said. Clear, predictable regulations reduce uncertainty for investors. Moses, you want to go in knowing exactly what you're facing as an innovator. You're bringing innovations. What does that mean? Can you work on blended financing? Are you tax exempt? And also ensuring that development funds that come in to supplement these investments, are given the necessary treatment. The other way we do this, Moses, and I think this is something that, in the collaboration that we'll be taking forward with yourselves is very clear, is about showcasing investment opportunities. So we organize investment forums that bring together medtech startups, established companies, and these events provide opportunities for these companies to pitch their ideas and exchange ideas for that matter. Moses, you recall that I alluded to the issue of capacity, which is a real issue. And building that talent pipeline is necessary so that if an investor comes here, they know they certainly have the necessary skills in the relevant field. So we work with a range of partners to ensuring that biomedical engineering, health informatics, and the likes is a human capacity that is available locally. The other component to this is really about facilitating partnerships. So we help international medtech companies with local partners that would be kind of crucial for them to navigate the local context, particularly in areas like device manufacturing and digital health infrastructure, which might be a little bit challenging for them. And this is where I speak to the potential of the African continental free trade area, which would make it more attractive so that if you're coming to Cape Town to manufacture your device there, once it's approved, it should be able to gain market access right through the continent. So I think summatively, these are the areas that we're working on to ensure that investments we attract investments to the continent for the medtech space. Moses, thank you.
Do you have any success stories that you could share that around investments or innovations that you have you have successfully supported in the medtech sector?
Indeed, Wamboy, you would recall I started by saying that AUDA-NEPAD specifically runs a health accelerator, and I think we work in that space. As you know, accelerators are there to promote companies to ensure their businesses are scalable, growth, and the likes. And of course, one component to this is provide the necessary linkages to resource mobilization, financing, and the likes. But I need to underscore that this effort is not solely from AUDA-NEPAD. As you know, bringing investments into a company involves a lot. So I need to credit the whole ecosystem that we've worked, including our accelerator, to ensure the success of these companies in that regard. So our accelerator broadly, if let me frame it from the top and then I go to the specifics, we have an accelerator that has supported about 28 companies of different growth stages, from startups to mature companies. In this time that we've run the 3 cohorts, we've served about 13 million patients, which directly and indirectly employed about 4,600 workers and raised about 46 million in capital. These are specific companies. So citing specific success stories, let me start with Africa Healthcare Network, AHN, otherwise known, a renal care provider that was part of our pioneer cohort in 2021. They started modestly in Rwanda in 2015 and have now grown to about 20 dialysis centers across Rwanda, Tanzania, and Kenya. AHN was able to complete a funding round of about $20 million, bringing their funding success to about $29 million. And we attribute this to kind of the success that we've realized. Another one is Africa Health Holdings, otherwise known as CarePoint, a Ghanaian provider. Their service delivery and patient management systems, again, tech, in health. They raised about $28 million in funding. Revital, which is a manufacturer of more than 40 medical devices, primarily single-use disposable for hospitals and laboratories, raised about $3.8 million and continue to really grow. We have another one called Oxygen Hub, which offers, oxygen and supply chain solutions within oxygen space to health facilities in Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Kenya. And they've been able to really raise about $12.3 million of this. Last but not least, I think let me use another different example, which is about tech also. We have a Nigerian drug stock who are really about managing inventory in health or assisting medical facilities to manage their inventories. Were able to raise about $8.4 million in additional funding. So, boy, I think those are nuggets of our successes. Again, working with others within that space, where we've been able to help medical support providers who are using tech to really access finance through the acceleration process, because the acceleration process helps them look at their financial modeling, look at their go-to-market strategies, their expansion and the likes, and this is how we've been part of this success. Thank you.
Those are great examples, George. I mean, I think we should, you should blow your own trumpet a little bit more, because these are just amazing examples of what we can do on the African continent. And I'm not sure that these are the stories that go out there, that people know, that this kind of support is available, that there are these companies that are doing these amazing things and being able to raise capital and so on and so forth. I think you're doing an incredible job. And I think we should shout about it a little bit from the mountaintops or somewhere.
Thank you. As the adage goes, walk alone and walk faster, but walk with others and walk farther. So I'd rather we walk farther, we will definitely speak of the successes as we continue to get that momentum. But certainly, it's a very enriching experience being part of the success that we experience.
Yeah, we are very happy to be a small part of your story. And I think from what Ramboy is saying, one of the things that we can do, and this podcast I think is able to do, is to amplify the story and to play a bit of a role in that shouting from the mountaintops that Ramboy is talking about. You've talked about very important components that you are addressing. You've talked about the policy side. You've talked about um, things like employment creation. Now, the one part that I'm curious to hear about is the market side. It is said that African markets, particularly the health market, are highly fragmented. And I wonder, does AUDA-NEPAD play any role on the market side? Maybe any work that you're trying to do to shape the market?
So I think good question. Fundamentally, a number of the issues that we talked about relate to the market and how the market plays out, if I were to use that word. So we if, for example, you have a well regulated, well harmonized market continentally, then you're speaking to a place that is leveled out. I'm coming in as an investor. I know whether I'm in Ghana or I'm in Nigeria, doesn't matter. I have the same playing field right across to Cape Town, right? So, of course, those dynamics of the market talk to the issues that we've largely talked about. But summatively, you know, by bringing in collaboration between the different stakeholders, promoting knowledge sharing, advocating for policies that support market growth, and also identifying the gaps in the market where we know that this medtech would have the greatest, you know, bring about the greatest difference in it for our people, is about ensuring that you know, the market works for us, or rather the market corresponds to our needs. And I think that's largely how I would sum our role in the market. You know, it might not be seen from a commercial point of view, but rather broadly from what would be the best um, what would be the best, what would be the best for us, right? Because we are the market, ultimately. We are the consumers of these medical devices. So what would be the best for us? And certainly that is what is at our forefront, from a policy, from a coordination, from, having the right uh, solutions for the market. So yes, Moses, I think that's primarily from a public sector perspective, which is our space, how we shape the market.
Very much, George. If we could go a bit deeper on the market shaping piece, I'm particularly interested in finding out if, as AUDA-NEPAD, as you think about harmonizing policy across the continent, are you probably also thinking about trade protection or some sort of mechanisms that would allow local manufacturers to actually sell? Because we do know that there are products, devices that could come from other parts of the world that might be cheaper. So as we think about harmonizing policies, are we also thinking about that side of things?
Thank you, Moses. I think this just calls for us to go a little bit deeper on the incentivizing local manufacturing, and there are various ways you can do that. You can give tax incentives to a particular sector, say, for example, medtech. You can regulate the standards such that only devices that meet a common standard. Again, you see, it's about common standard, so that they don't enter some with dodgy standards don't enter your market. But let me go to the first component and take the example of the issue we raised earlier around the Startup Act, for example, and look at the countries that that are trying to push this to ensure that startups, because startups are a key component of the medtech, for example. A lot of startups are coming up with tech and the likes. And look at the examples of countries that have successfully done it, Tunisia being one, where amongst other things, there's a tax holiday for, say, 5 years if you're a startup. You fit the definition of a startup. You get a subsidy on your employee social security. You get a pathway to a pot of money that is available and made available by private sector investment and government and the likes. Already that removes that whole burden of dealing with banks, interest, tax, etc. And you stand quite, a good success rate, because all those hurdles have been removed. definitely there will be an impact on the cost of your devices and or medicines if you're doing that, and the likes. The other, if you're looking at manufacturing of, say, medical and pharmaceuticals, it's about how you treat them from a tax point of view, so that the others that are importing these don't compete unfairly. And again, the standards are adhered to. So what are your pharmaceutical standards vis-a-vis whatever is being imported? Last but not least to this point is the issue of harmonizing through the African Continental Free Trade Area, right? You want a situation where we are trading with ourselves. If you are advanced in manufacturing of devices and or pharmaceuticals. And take, for example, of a case we had in point of a medical device manufacturer in Cape Town who had a novel solution to preventing loss of lives during childbirth for mothers, registered in South Africa, registered in sets of other two countries in the continent, registered in the US, and registered in Europe. But this particular medical device manufacturer cannot access upward of 40 markets in the continent just because our standards do not talk to each other. It's a practical case of the asymmetry and the need to standardize those, so that that device, if it is registered in South Africa, then it means we have common standards and I should be able to take it to all markets. So those are the asymmetries and the lack of harmonized policies and processes that impede on those on our access to local markets and trading amongst ourselves, ACFTA, and give advantage, and duly so, to other people who are coming to the different markets on an individual basis. So India would go and work with country X directly. China would go and work with country Y directly, and yet we're here. I'm manufacturing this device. It's cleared. It's successful. It is targeting, recall our discussion again, a problem that is unique to us, right? So that's what you want. You want those health outcomes to be met. Yet we are not working towards standardizing this so that because if you look at our health systems, the elements and issues, mortality, child mortality during birth, etc., are all the same. So those are some of the issues. So to bring the point home, there are mechanisms that are currently in the process of being implemented that hopefully will deal with this asymmetry and not make us a dumping ground for devices and or other pharmaceuticals from further afield. Thank you, Moses.
So, a little bit earlier, George, you mentioned frugal innovation, and Professor Sudesh from the University of Cape Town, was on this podcast, and we had a bit of a conversation about frugal innovation. And the conversation was about how when there are people who talk about frugal innovation, and they're talking about defeatured medical devices and equipment and low tech. And I'm pretty sure that's not what you're talking about. And the conversation went on to talk about really understanding how to look at the innovations that we have from an end-to-end economic perspective, so that it's not just that the device or equipment itself is low cost, but the entire service and the way that we're providing healthcare ends up being very affordable and accessible. And so I just went into all of that because I wanted to ask, in that context or any other context, What are you excited about in terms of trends in the medtech sector, emerging technologies that can really revolutionize healthcare on the continent?
Yeah, boy, I think you know, it's a good time to be working in this space and really seeing the rapid evolution of technology solutions, and for me, not as an end in itself, but as it as those solutions really go to solve the problem, because that's ultimately what is important. And so seeing how diagnostics can be done from remote settings, one person sitting on one end and the other, is fascinating. I mean, as part of the work that we've done, we are engaging in this, some of these interesting pieces. So broadly for me, and I think for us as an institution, the trends on AI powered diagnostics, powerful, and I'm sure this will be continuing to grow, because this will significantly improve health access in remote settings, no doubt. 3D printing of medical devices. I mean, there is a professor, I forget his name, but from the University of Pretoria here, who 3D printed that smallest bone in the ear, completely revolutionized how the approach to restoring hearing, could be done. I'm not using the right medical terms and the likes, but the solution, 3D printing, completely changing the landscape. The costs that can be reduced, and the customizations, access, telemedicine. I think those are fundamentally the most excitable solutions that I can see that will completely revolutionize the continent. And I hope, of course, with the tampered with ethical standards and norms, that this, of course, will be things that will, for us as a continent, bring us to the level where we, get rid of this disproportionate burden of disease and health that we've been facing for forever. Yeah. So, boy, I think those are the ones for me.
Thank you, George. I mean, this has been such an amazing conversation in terms of understanding at the continental level some of the work that's being done. Is when we sit in our space and we are, like Moses said, pedaling away, under the water, we sometimes don't know what is happening at the African continental level. And it's just been such a pleasure to hear some of those things from you.
So, George, maybe as we conclude, you can tell us how can our audience reach you, whether startups, innovators, or investors. How can they reach you? How can they interact with you? Anyone who's found this conversation interesting and would like to reach out to you, how would you suggest they do that?
Thank you, Moses and Wamboy, again, first of all, for having this wonderful conversation, and looking forward to the culmination of this in a couple of weeks. We are on all social media platforms, so you can get us on our website, you can get us on X, and Facebook as well, just by looking up AUDA-NEPAD. You'll definitely hit us when you go and type in AUDA-NEPAD. On specifically the startups growth stage, and particularly with the accelerator, we do put out a yearly call to join the accelerator, and we've just started our fourth cohort in June. that will be running right through to December. We do send out an open call that is put out on all socials as well. So they can look out for the fifth cohort in 2025 that will be coming out. It's open to all for as long as you're in health and you're providing some form of resilience to the health systems. It could be medtech, it could be making access to health in low resource settings available, or just look out for what the call, and we have a robust process that we engage to get the companies in, and we welcome my details are on our website, so you can reach out to me anytime you want. And yeah, I'd be happy to engage on this or any other subject. And certainly, I think this kind of exchanges, particularly with the private sector and medtech in particular, is excitable, and we look forward to growing this engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, George, and see you on August 28th at the Transforming African MedTech Conference in Nairobi.
Thank you, Amboy. Thank you, Moses. I definitely look forward to our discussion further on this in person, and it's been absolutely exciting engaging on this conversation, and we look forward to having some more.
Thank you. Thank you very much, George.